Okay, hi, my name is Jhony Ljungstedt. I'm art director at DICE, and I'm here today to talk you through the journey how it was to make a stylized game like Mirror's Edge, with everything from an idea to how it was conceptualized and how we then iterated and refined the style and then how it then ended up in the game. So this is not going to be a technical talk in any way. It's going to be purely focused on the aesthetics and the design process around this and how we were thinking about making the universe. And if you want to know more about the technical aspect, then you can listen to Fabian Christine's presentation he held earlier this year in San Francisco. So first, short about me then. So I've been now in the gaming industry for 15, 16 years. Actually, most of those years I've been here at DICE. So it's a great company, can highly recommend it. I guess I've been doing the most things you can do as an artist. I started as a 3D modeler. And actually, the first game I made was a game called Legacy on Rosemont Hill. And that was a horse game for 10-year-old girls. And don't ask me why we did that one, but hey, it was a game. Actually, the first game I made for DICE was a game called Shrek. That was done to the GameCube. And a few young people here maybe don't know what a GameCube is, but that was a console that existed a long time ago. And actually, that game actually scored 3 out of 10 by IGN, so maybe not my proudest moment in life, but at least it gave me a chance to work with games, and I started getting understanding for how it is to work with it, and it gives me some really nice, I just wanted to learn more about it. So then I learned level art, and then moved on to VFX, did lighting, character art, and then became a lead artist on Bad Company 2 Vietnam. And then after that, art director on Medal of Honor, some Battlefield expansion packs, and now art director on Mirror's Edge Catalyst. So that's sort of my journey. So if you just quickly can raise your hands, how many of you actually played the first Mirror's Edge game? Oh. Okay, great. And how many of you played Mirror's Edge Catalyst? Okay. Great. So actually, I can see that you already know a little bit about this universe already. But let's just do a really quick recap. So the first Mirror's Edge came out in 2008. It was quite iconic, quite distinct, with a white city and the bold use of accent colors. And it was the first-person parkour game. We heavily focused on the movement. And that game was actually done in Unreal. And there they pre-baked the light maps, which would have helped to create this really, really interesting stylized game in terms of light bounce and color bleeds. But that also meant that their level was going to be static. And their level design approach was more direct and was more linear as well, whereas what we wanted to do with Mirror's Edge Catalyst.
Who's that in the window? It's a damn kid. Get her!
Dogan sends his best. Enjoy your freedom.
Faith Connors. Wherever I turn, there you are. The only language you and your kind speaks is destruction.
It's good to have you back, girl.
I heard some runner got out of juvie today. What are you gonna do next?
I'm gonna run.
I'm gonna send a clear message to Kruger.
Then you'll have to shoot me too.
Go on, girl. Save us all.
What is that?
That is your future.
So as you can see, Mirror's Edge Catalyst came out in June 2016. And also done in Frostbite, our own engine. So this was actually a reboot. We wanted to retell Faith's origin story. We wanted you to give us a chance to know more about Faith and her friends and his universe. And also we wanted to create a more immersive storytelling. That's why we moved away from 2D cutscenes and then we made in-game renders instead. And we also want to give you the freedom of choice. The freedom of choice of traversing this space the way we wanted you to do and just having fun in this massive city. So that's why we open up the city much more for you as a player. And we also wanted to create a city that was dynamic and full of life. And that's why we investigated a lot of technology and time in developing the time of day systems, crowds, traffic, LMS, anything that will help us make this city feel very rich and very vibrant. So that meant that we couldn't pre-bake the light maps that we did in the first game. So even if we wanted to, we couldn't just recreate the look from the original game. That's why we had to do something different. So we knew from day one that this game was going to be different. Then I had to sort of establish the what from a visual perspective, like what's going to be different and why. And then how should we think about when we're creating this universe. And what we decided to go for was to create a very distinct style and tone. And this style and tone was sort of going to be affecting everything we do from art, animation, design. And this will sort of be the glue for this experience. And I guess here was the first lesson I learned. That is when you are working with a stylized game, it's really important that you create very simple but clear design rules. Define strong keywords, and you use them over and over again on the team. And it was also about exposing them to images and mood boards, anything that sort of reflected the style and the vibe that we were going for. You just fill the visual libraries with these images. Because essentially I just wanted the team to sort of live and breathe this style and tone. And the keywords we decided to use for our style and tone, it was believable, it was elegant, and it was attitude. So we wanted to create a believable world, a world that the player can accept and can relate to, so we just immerse themselves in the fiction and in the story. So it was then important for us to ground it in something the player can recognize. Otherwise, we would risk of creating something that would feel surreal or artificial. And if you think about it, it would be impossible to keep a white world white the whole time because the forces of nature, pollution, mankind, all of these things would affect it in some way. That's why in order to keep it real, we have to make sure that we did add some wear and tear in there. We need to use different tones of whites. And also we have to have a great understanding of how materials react to light. That's why PBR helped us a lot. And our fiction is also taking place somewhere in the near future. So even though this world was going to feel futuristic, it was still important that it felt recognizable. So it's going to be a high-tech world, but we didn't want to push it so far so it became something that was sci-fi. And that's why I used this quote to sort of reinforce that. And that was something Steven Spielberg said when he created his fiction for Minority Report. That too was something that was taking place in the near future. And he said, you don't have to reinvent society in order to portray society. And that was exactly the mindset I wanted us to have when you're creating this fiction and this universe. You don't have to reinvent and redesign everything in order to make it feel like a stylized research game. That was really important for everyone to understand. And sort of the ratio I use between believability and futuristic is sort of 70-30. So that meant that 70% of what we create, we can actually base or present and today. And then we just apply the other 30%. It's going to make it feel like a stylized research game. I also wanted to create an elegant world, a world that is bright, pristine, and exclusive. This is like a world taken to perfection. So elegant for us means is white. And if you strip away, all the details and all the unnecessary noise, you take away, the grays, the browns, and the dirt. So by default, our game is going to feel elegant. It is going to feel inviting. And what elegance for me is as well is minimalism. And I'm pretty sure all of you heard the expression, less is more. And if any game would follow that, this would be that game. Because you have to understand, this society is all about control. The conglomerate of, controlling the media, the broadcast, its cameras everywhere. They tell you what to eat, what to wear, how to behave. And for me, a minimalistic art style reflects that sense of control. It was about to controlling your design, controlling your space, removing all the unnecessary noise. Just focus on the core of your design and don't hide the flaws by adding more and more detail in there, like you do in other games. And by removing all this unnecessary noise, that's going to make something that feels very exclusive and very expensive. But you look at that bag there, for instance, look how simple and clean that is. And the only concentration of detail is around that logo. And then that makes that logo stand out and read as important. And that's exactly what's going to happen with everything we put in our game. Everything is going to read, everything is going to stand out. And that's why it's so important that if you place something in there, it needs to be there for a reason. It needs to have a purpose. And we also wanted to create a world with attitude. And what attitude means for us is contrast. Everything from open to enclosed, large to small, warm to cold, etc. And I sort of wanted to use the attitude to balance back some of the elegance. Because everything is going to be elegant and white and pristine and exclusive, then you would risk of creating something that would feel surreal, artificial, or more like a dream world. And then you would break the believable rule. And attitude for us is also angular. So you're going to see that we use a lot of angular cuts and folds and lines in everything from key art to character design, architecture, and even on faith, for instance. And attitude for us is also about being confident. You have to understand, these people, this society, is all about climbing the corporate ladder. It's about portraying yourself as somebody successful and strong. And that will sort of create a certain manner. So, the way you would talk and move would have some sort of sense of control in it. But we still have to make sure that it was relaxed and natural. Because what we didn't want to have was something that felt clumsy or tense, just over-exaggerated, but then it would break the elegant rule. And confidence for you as an artist is, being confident in your design. It's about controlling your shapes, controlling your details, and dare to be bold and dare to stay minimalistic. Don't clutter your space just because you feel that it feels a little bit empty. Always remember, less is more. So that would be the what, what we want this universe to feel like and what we want you to think about when you're designing it. Then the how. How is this interpreted? How is this translated then into something that we can use and base this universe on? And that's where the concept discovery starts. So now it's about interpreting the style, understanding the universe, understanding the characters, know also how to look at references and how to use that to your advantage when you're creating this universe. And this was like a really long journey for us. And in the beginning, I kept it fairly open. But I think it's important, when you're designing something, especially that early, that you really push it too far. Then when you feel that, okay, now it's too far, that's when you start to dial it back. Don't do like small, intricate steps when you're designing something new. I think that's really important to remember. And you can see here how we explored a lot of architectural detail in sort of shapes and form, softness, diagonal lines, futuristic, and so on. You can see here we tried different locations like city, even like how would the wasteland look like in Mirror's Edge world. And this was also an opportunity for me as an art director to see, how would the artist interpreting the style and the tone? What happens, when it becomes elegant, believable, and futuristic? I also think it's important sometimes to stop and start questioning yourself and question your design, and ask yourself, why does it look like that? Because sometimes, we tend to create shapes and forms just for the sake of creating shapes and forms. Then you're doing it the wrong way. Because you start to lose some of the functionality of it and the believability in the space. So now it's when you're identifying what you like, but more importantly, what you don't like and why. And when you know the why, that's when you can start creating guidelines and rules and around that. And that's why concept discovery is so important and necessary for you to go through. And at the same time we're doing this, we would explore things in the game as well, everything from shapes and forms, same things. So we had tons of these images, lots of interesting spaces, but I still felt that it wasn't grounded enough. It felt a little bit too experimental. It was hard to sort of define what it is we actually are doing. And that's why I think I learned my second lesson here, was that by keeping it too open to interpretation, it was really hard to define something concrete, something that would say, this is a new mirror search style. And that's why I sort of had to stop and analyze, get a better understanding of how to translate and how to interpret a style. And here's also where I felt that, I had to narrow it down a bit. I needed to give us something more concrete to base this on. And that's when I took the team to Tokyo. So we needed to give us a chance to experience something different and something new. And for you who haven't been in Tokyo, I would really recommend you to go there because it's really interesting space with architecture and infrastructure. Even the culture is very different from Europe and the West. And the reason why I chose Tokyo was because if you look at this image here to the left, you can see all the small-scale buildings clustered against the large, massive contemporary structure. That for me sort of created a nice symbolism for how this society functions. Because you have the strong, the powerful conglomerate towering above the small, the rest of the mass. So visually, this was like a nice echo, of the society. And you can see as well that Tokyo has a lot of contrast in terms of large and small, but also from old and new. Where you can walk along this really nice, fancy commercial street, and all the building facades and structures are in there, was really detailed, nice, and polished and clean. But as soon as you step in a little bit, they was really old and dirty and badly maintained, and I really liked that contrast. And Tokyo also has a lot of organic and asymmetrical architecture. You can see here, it feels very playful the way they use the shapes and the forms. So I felt that, if we know how to look at this and analyze it and take away all the things that we don't need, that this would give us a really strong foundation in creating something very distinct and unique. And of course, we took tons of these images from facades, rooftops, people, anything that will help us visualize this new style. So now we have all of these references. But what would be the difference now versus before? Because before, when we did do the concept discovery, we did use tons of references there as well. The big difference now was that, okay, now we said, let's narrow it down. Let Tokyo be our foundation. Let's base it on that. And then we applied the right 30% on top of that. And also, now I actually wanted to show people how they could interpret the references, and how they can use that to their advantage when they are designing research. It was about making people understand and appreciate the shapes and the form in a space, especially Tokyo in this case. And remember that you don't have to redesign and reinvent everything in order to make it look like research. And it was also important to show them that you don't get stuck in the detail, especially not that early in the process where we were. But when you can see past the detail and you can see past the noise, just analyze the space itself and look at the big structures and the big forms. You can actually see that, like I said before, take away the dirt and the noise and all the unnecessary detail, make it white, then you're going to have something that feels very elegant. So you can see that, if we wanted to, we can actually just copy Tokyo one-to-one. Because for me, that is mirror research world. But of course, we have to push it further than this because, you need to give it a little bit more edge to it. But still, though, it was important to show the people that, you don't have to reinvent and redesign everything you do, because Tokyo has so much things to offer for us already as it is. Because when you can see past all the detail and all the noise, just look at an image for the shapes and how that functions. Then you can actually see, that what a building really is just a containment for the details. So not the details themselves is going to make your space look interesting. If you want to have an interesting space, then you need to think about the big picture. You need to think about composition. And if those two are not strong enough, then it doesn't matter how much detail you will throw in there, because that's still going to make the space look weak. Because if you think that you can create an interesting space by throwing in a lot of detail, you're just doing it the way other games are doing it. Here is the way we should think about this, like take away as much as you can and still make it look interesting. Because if you look at this image and just analyze it, you can actually see that this image is actually kind of flat. You can see like the building shapes, the building blueprints almost have the same size, and the silhouette is actually kind of low, everything sort of feels the same. So sure, it has the elegance, it has the believability, it doesn't have the attitude, it doesn't have the contrast. I remember what I said before about Tokyo. You have the large contemporary structures, and you have the smaller structures clustered next to it. What happens, if you would throw some of that in there? What does that do to your space? And already here, you can start to see it create some drama and some tension between large and small. And it was also about, telling a story with your space, and not just, randomly throw details in there in order to try to make it feel interesting. Everything needs to have meaning, and everything needs to have a purpose behind it. For instance, the story here could have been from new to old. You can see here I kept like the modern, cleaner structures closer to the camera. That could sort of be, on your way to maybe a commercialized, fancy area. Then I kept, if you look into the image, the smaller, intricate details. That could sort of be on your way maybe to an older residential space. So that you would have this journey for the player to go through modern, clean, to something that's more intricate, dirty, and old, and to residential space. And that would be like a nice journey for the player to experience. And then you can turn a big structure in the middle to a landmark, or that will sort of help you with readability and navigation. So you can see here really that, with very little effort, you can actually create a very interesting space without having to redesign everything. It doesn't matter of understanding, take away the noise, take away the detail, add back the right 30%. Then you're going to have something that feels very stylized and very interesting. So we did these concepts just to show the artist. I remember the quote, don't reinvent society in order to portray society. You don't have to reinvent and redesign everything you do in order to make it feel interesting and mirror's edge. As you can see, our world has so much to offer. It doesn't matter about you understanding, take away the detail, take away the noise, and add back the right 30%, then you're going to have something that feels very interesting. For instance, what happens, if we change up the rooftop material on here? What does that do to the experience? Or, how much detail can you strip away before you start losing the believability in the space? Or what happens if you throw in some color in there? What does that do to it? Or when you push it really far, maybe create like a fancy rooftop bar, a restaurant up there. And for me, I read believable. I see, how the big structures sort of support and relate to each other. I can see, the white, the pristine, the elegance. And I can even see some attitude in there. So that's the style and tone. Now we have the keywords. Now we sort of showed you how you can interpret references and how you can use them to your advantage when you are designing something. Then, let's see how that happens when we apply it to our new concepts and then into something that we actually used in the game. So now we have a better context. And for you who don't know, our city is called City of Glass. And we want each and every district in City of Glass to have its own signature in terms of atmosphere, colors, life, and even the audioscape would change depending on where you were in the district. So here I could look like in downtown, for instance. And the whole idea with downtown is that downtown is this hip and cool place. It's very loud, it's very busy. It will sort of be like, the heartbeat of a city of glass. And the architectural language for downtown would be organic. So we wanted to use a lot of narrow and angled streets. You can see we worked with a lot of intricate details and radius shapes just to create some nice silhouettes. And we also wanted downtown to feel retrofitted. And remember what I said about Tokyo? You would have facades facing important commercial streets, look very nice and pristine and very exclusive. But as soon as you get on the rooftops and in the back alleys, those going to look less maintained and dirty. I also want to work with a lot of contrast in downtown. Same way, again, like Tokyo. Medium and small-scale buildings clustered against large, massive contemporary ones. Anything to sort of create some nice tension in the space. And we also wanted downtown to feel a little bit older. We also wanted to give it some more history. That's why here, you will see more wear and tear. I hope you can see that, because sometimes it's hard to see because of all the whiteness. But I mean, yeah, you can see, we wanted to use a lot of intricate details and noise just to create an interesting space. And the reason behind that is because, remember, everything needs to have a reason. The reason behind that is that, the society doesn't really care about maintaining these rooftops, because the citizens, they're not supposed to be up here anyway. They should, be out in the food zones or in the factories, working hard, or, down on the streets, spending their money. That's why they just leave this as it is. But this is Faith's home, and this is what she knows. So you can sort of see, that this beautiful picture this society is trying to paint is just false. It's literally just a facade. And of course, the people that live on high up here need to sort of reflect this kind of vibe. So we wanted to keep downtown quite busy and quite noisy in terms of details. You see, we use some exposed machinery, cables and stuff. So then to contrast that, we would have Anchor. And the whole idea with Anchor here is that, these rooftops, you should almost feel like you are supposed to be on them. That's what we want to feel, very nice and clean and reflective. And the whole idea with Anchor is that, here you would come to do some expensive, exclusive shopping and go to fancy rooftop bars. So, and only the selected elite are allowed entrance into Anchor. So if you are in Anchor, then you will need a lot of money. And the architectural language for Anchor would be vertical. So we wanted to create, believable spaces very high up, but we still want to have some more sense of weight, towering above it. And it was also about making Anchor feel very exclusive. So we use clean and simple forms, a lot of vertical lines, and you can see a lot of reflective, expensive materials. Anything to sort of make Anchor feel very expensive and very pristine. And of course, the people that live in this area needs to reflect that kind of vibe. So you would come, to Anchor to spend money and enjoy yourself and go to clubs. Then to contrast that, we would have the view. And the whole idea with the view here is to make it feel very soft and very inviting. And the view is by many considered to be like the final stepping stone before you get elevator invited into Sky City. Or in Sky City, that's where the elite lives. So if you get to the view, then you have succeeded in this universe. So we wanted the view to feel very, very calming. That's why we put it very close to the water. Then you get a really nice change in the audioscape as well. And we also wanted the view to feel cultural. So you can experience art installations, museums, opera houses, and so on. And we also wanted the view to feel very soft. That's why we use the soft interior spaces here. And here you can also enjoy nature, for instance, cherry trees. I remember what I said before about minimalism and about control. For me, the ultimate power of control is when you control nature. And of course, that's what this society does. So for instance, if you're in downtown, we have the low class and mid class working and living. Over there, you're not allowed to enjoy everything. But here in the view, now you have succeeded in this universe. Here, you can enjoy everything this city has to offer. So then you get this really nice contrast and tension between the spaces. You would have the controlled and sterile downtown versus the soft and inviting the view. So we have these different locations. Each and every one of them has their own signatures in terms of color, shapes, form, atmosphere, life. So we sort of create like this really broad palette for the artists and the designers to use and for you as a player to experience. And of course, there are much more errors than this, but I can just not fit more mood boards in here, so I guess you have to buy the game and play it if you want to experience some more stuff. So this is how a rich and vibrant city of glass can look like when you apply the style and tone to it. So then what happens when you apply the style and tone then on character design? I think it's important, when you are designing characters, that it needs to reflect who they are and what the purpose is in the universe. You need to know the function behind the design and the reason behind it. And I think I like to challenge the artists a lot and ask them, why is that thing there? And if they cannot give me a good answer, I just tell them to take it away. And always remember, less is more. So what believe in means on character design means natural body proportions, strong material definition. They're going to feel high-tech and advanced, but we still want to make sure that it feels, or you didn't push it so far, so it became sci-fi. And elegance here, it means form before function. So here actually I'm nudging some of the believability in order to create stylish, interesting designs. But I do that for a reason, and I do that with a purpose. And also I'm an art director, so I'm allowed to break my own rules. And attitude, of course, is posture. The way these people move, the way these people walk and talk and so on. Needs to have some sort of sense of attitude and control to it. And you're going to see that we use a lot of diagonal lines and folds to make them, to give them some more attitude and edginess as well. And for me also, attitude is material separation. For instance, you can have a cotton shirt, then you maybe put something reflective and leathery on one of the arms. And the way those two materials meets, for me, that's cocky. That's attitude. That's what we use a lot in our character designs. So here you can see how it looks like when we apply that to Krugisek. And in Krugisek are the bad guys. You're going to encounter this a lot in this game. So the high-level idea is high fashion meeting militarized tactical details. And then we merge that together through the style and tone. And you think about, military clothing and police outfits. Those tend to be a little bit loose. You get big, long draping folds. And for me, that's not elegant. So when we design something, we look more at an Armani suit that feels very tight and very slim. Then we apply the tactical details. And then you get the design that looks like that. You can see, I use some diagonal lines on the sleeves and on the legs there, just to give them some attitude. And you can especially see that on the hunter drone and the VTOL, armor plating has a lot of diagonal lines, anything to make them feel really aggressive. Then you have the runners. And the high-level idea here is high fashion meeting sports gear. And the runners, they need to look like people that can take the fight against this oppressed society and Krugisek. That's why we gave this really strong, confident, athletic look. And you can see, you use the same language again. A lot of diagonal lines, just to give them some attitude. And of course, runners need to feel agile and movable. That's why here we work more with lighter and thinner materials. And what you can see here as well is that, we never exaggerate the body proportions, especially not the female. And that's something you tend to see in a lot of other games and designs, that you're sort of objectifying and sexualizing the female body. And for me, that's not elegant. We don't do it here. I still want it to read as confident and strong and beautiful. You always need to remember the elegance. And then we have the Black November. And the idea here is high fashion meeting old and worn, thicker materials. Because Black November, they live deep underground in the tunnels of rezoning, and down there it's going to be very cold and very wet. That's why these people would need more layers of clothes, thick materials to keep them warm. And in our world, these people would be considered as bums or people that live on the street. So even if they live under very harsh circumstances on the border to starvation, and these people are fanatics, I still didn't want it to be any ugliness in this world. And that's why we gave them this very cocky, confident look with a lot of attitude. So we have many different social classes in this world, and each one of them has their own signature in terms of materials, colors, and so on. But I don't have time to go through all of that today because I need to cover the next part. That is, I will actually create this universe. So now I'm going to talk about our different production phases and how then it ended up looking in the game. So our pipeline was divided into 4 phases. Phase 1 would have been when you reference gathering, put together mood boards, do some simple concepts. Phase 2 is when you actually get something you can play on. So now we're laying the foundation for City of Glass. So now it's about, you showing me that you can create a believable space. You understand composition, you understand how to create strong framing. You know how to scale the proportions of building and how to relate to each other. And also you have to understand how you can create an interesting space with very simple shapes. And for me, this was the most important part of designing City of Glass. And because if you don't know how to create a strong foundation with very simple shapes and forms, then it doesn't matter how much detail you are going to throw into that space. And this was a very difficult phase for some people. So I guess here is the third lesson I learned, that this phase was a bit abstract. It was hard for some people to understand the space. It was hard to sort of visualize, what the final product would look like. So in the end, we ended up throwing in more detail just to help with the scale, proportions, and depth. Then for phase 3, and now is sort of when we're starting to be more creative. So now you start to see more architecture detail in the spaces. And actually, at this phase, we had the whole game up and running, which meant we can play the whole game from the beginning to an end. And that sort of helped us assess if something needed to change or removed or even deleted before we moved on to phase 4. And phase 4 is when we apply the style. Now it is about the details. But now you're doing it in the right time with the right context. So now is when everything comes in, light, colors, atmosphere. And phase 4 was considered as done. At this point, your area would be ready for ship, essentially. And we had roughly around 10 months to take the whole game from phase 3 to phase 4. So there's a lot of work going in there, and we had to push really hard here. And after phase 4, then we actually had some polish and some bug fixing. So some areas got some more love and attention to them. But an area after phase 4 actually, it did hold up to ship. So it was a really good work there by the team. So that's sort of the production pipeline that we went through creating City of Glass. Let's look at then how it looked in the game. So you can see downtown. It is in phase 2. I think this was probably one of the most successful ones in terms of composition. You can see there's a really nice tension and contrast between large, medium, small-scale shapes. It creates a lot of interest around the centerpiece. And overall, this was like a really strong foundation. Then through phase 3, when we start applying the details, now we sort of started to get an understanding for how the game looks like. It sort of feels like a residential space. So now, the player, or sort of the people, understand that, how it's going to turn into later on. And then for phase 4, when we apply the style, in this case, the style of downtown, and downtown's going to be more busy, more noisy, and have more wear and tear, a lot of atmosphere, then it ended up looking like this. But what you can see, though, if you compare that to phase 2, then nothing really changed in terms of composition. All the big shapes, all the big structures were in place, and they hold up all the way through the production pipeline. And that's what was so important for the people to understand, that you need to create a strong foundation, because then you just apply, the details then within those shapes. Here you have an area in anchor at phase 3. Quite rough, but still, you can see the big structures. I remember anchor was going to be very pristine, very exclusive. The rooftops here should almost feel like you are supposed to be on them. There is an interest there in the center, in the middle, some sort of pedestrianized rooftop. So the big structures are in place. Then for phase 4, when we apply the style, you ended up looking like this. So now you can see, the shiny, the reflections and stuff. We try to hide away some of the unnecessary noise as much as we can. You can see how we use the colors as well to sort of guide the player and the eye inwards towards the residential space. And in there also we throw in some nice water and some nice waterfalls just to make it feel really expensive. Here you have another area in downtown in phase 3. And actually, not all the spaces were at phase 3 at the same time. You can see this one, for instance, is very rough. Only like the big structures are in place. But at least you can see sort of the lines that sort of points inwards into the image. And then for phase 4, when we applied the style, it ended up looking like this. And this part of downtown was going to be a little bit more industrial. So we worked a lot with smaller, intricate detail to sort of create some nice silhouettes. And you can see, the way we use the colors, this place got its attitude. This is another area in anchor at phase 3. At one point in time, we did have the time of day up and running. We actually didn't have time to lit the space. Or sometimes, the artists would actually break and light, and then everything just turned black. So it's quite hard to read and navigate sometimes. But if you just look at the picture, just look at the big picture and the structures, you see you standing on a plateau looking down into space. These are shapes down there. On the right there, you can see some long structures going along a long road. And then for phase 4, we applied the style. It ended up like this. And again, now you're just applying the right details with the right context. A lot of vertical lines. We clean up the space, make it feel very nice, reflective, and high-end. You can even see, how you get some of the rooftops bar up there to the left. And then you apply, the palette of anchor. And then I ended up looking like this. Here is another fancy rooftop bar in anchor. It doesn't need just really reflective and expensive and luxurious. You just want to be here with your friends. Maybe not for phase 3, but for phase 4, when we're done with it, it ended up looking like this. I think here is a perfect example, how the artist translated, the style and tone. I can sort of see, the soft, elegant curves. I can see the diagonal lines. You have the attitude. You have a nice tension in this place. At night time, these lights would actually pulsate and make this space feel really vibrant. So overall, this was a really good interpretation from the artist. Here you can see another area from the view at phase 3. Remember, the view was about making it feel very soft and very inviting. And over here also, you would enjoy nature. So you can see the big structures are in place. So now we're just applying the style and tone. And the details, they end up looking like this. You have to understand that, there's a lot of thought process going in behind taking something from phase 3 to phase 4. And maybe you think, how hard is it to create a minimalistic space, Take away 80% and you have it. But believe me, it's really not that simple. And I would argue to say that it's probably even more difficult to make a minimalistic space. But like I said, it's about understanding the shapes and the forms, taking away the right detail and then back the right. And then also about, this space also needs to be traversable and readable and needs to be fun to run around in. And in a game that is so focused on movement, every square meter is super important. That's why it's so hard to balance these components against each other. So overall, I'm really happy to see how the people on the team have translated this style and tone and just being fun and be creative with it. So now I'm just going to end the whole presentation by showing you some more of these locations. And I'm actually not going to talk more. I'm just going to let you enjoy it. So that's actually all that I had. So I guess that's it. And I say thank you for coming and enjoy your day. Thank you. Bye-bye.